Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to take a look at how the passive voice is used in business English. I want to look at how, if you work in a company, how you might use the passive voice. Also, if you're a government employee, how would you use the passive voice? What about if you were a university student? Would you use a passive voice in your assignments? Would you use a passive voice when you're doing your exams? The passive voice in English has these uses. One, it's used to show politeness. We use the passive voice when we're being polite. The passive voice in English is used to show that one is being polite. Secondly, it indicates professionalism. The third use of the passive voice in English is in academic writing. In academic writing, we use the passive voice when we're doing research or writing an assignment, for instance. So therefore, the uses of the passive voice are one, for professional purposes. Instance, if you were a journalist and you're writing an article for The Guardian or for the Malawian Times, you might employ the passive voice. What if you worked in a company and you want to put out an announcement? How would you word your sentence? You're going to use the passive voice. Well, I suppose that's what you would want to use, wouldn't you? To appear more professional. Thirdly, it is a requirement in academic writing, isn't it, for the passive voice to be employed. So, those are the uses of the passive voice. Can you think of any more? I'm going to read some sentences. They're going to be in the active voice, and then I'm going to change them to the passive voice. Please listen to my sentences. Orange sells 40 SIM cards to customers. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. Orange is referring to the telecommunications company, not the colour. Orange sells 40 SIM cards to customers. This ain't a factual statement at all, ladies and gents. It's just an example. Because we're going to work with a passive voice, the first thing we need to do is identify the segments of the sentence. We're going to put the different words and phrases into grammatical groups. Orange is my subject. It is a proper noun. It starts with a capital letter. In my subject phrase, I have one word, orange. That's followed by my verb phrase. The verb sells is in the third person singular because my subject has to correspond with my verb. So sells is in the verb phrase. Moving on to my object phrase, I have the adjective faulty, which describes SIM cards. SIM cards is a noun phrase. So in my object part of the sentence, I have faulty SIM cards. And then I have two customers, which is actually my indirect object. And this time it is a phrase that starts with a preposition. So the parts of my sentence are subject, orange, which is a noun phrase, sells, which is a verb phrase, faulty SIM cards is my object, two customers is my indirect object. I have two objects in my sentence, don't I? I have faulty SIM cards and I have two customers. So When I want to do the passive voice, what would I be required to say? Faulty SIM cards are sold to customers by Orange. That's one variation. Faulty SIM cards are sold to customers by Orange. That is one variation. Another variation that you might hear, which is actually a more common way to put it, would be this. Customers are sold faulty SIM cards by Orange. What have I done? I have two objects in the sentence, and in the sentences I have started my passive voice with either one of them. Did you notice that the verb in the present singular becomes what? A past participle. On the page, there are two videos about how to form the passive voice. This is just building on that knowledge. So the present simple becomes is or are plus past participle in the passive voice. Please have a look at the sentences on the screen. To recap, in the passive voice, we use is, are, plus the past participle in the present simple tense. Let's have one example in the past simple tense. Orange sold faulty SIM cards to customers. Orange sold faulty SIM cards to customers. In order to absolve myself from litigation, I need to say that these are just examples. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. Now you know how to break up your sentence because I've just shown you an example. And so when you're going to flip the sentence or to put it in the passive voice, I assume you're going to have a sentence that reads like this. Faulty SIM cards were sold to customers by Orange. Variation number 1. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. You may also have decided to start with the other object, which was customers, in which case you would have customers were sold faulty SIM cards by Orange. To recap, we're looking at how the passive voice is used in business English or for academic purposes. So if you were a government employee, how would you use the passive voice? I'm going to be quiet so you can have a read of the sentences on the screen. We've used two tenses, haven't we? Present simple, past simple. Have you observed what happened with the passive voice in the past simple? We went from was to, because we had a plural subject this time, we went from was to were. Did you see what happened with the passive voice in the past simple tense? Sold, our verb phrase, became were sold because our subject was now a plural noun phrase. Therefore, the rule is that in the passive voice we employ was or were plus a past participle. You've also noticed I'm using the preposition by. Please have a look at the sentences on the screen. Let's move on to a third tense. The third tense would be the present continuous tense. You can expect to have a lexical verb ending in ing. Orange is selling faulty SIM cards to customers. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. Can you please break up the sentence into segments with myself? Orange is going to be your subject. Is selling is going to be your verb phrase. And object number 1 is faulty SIM cards. Object number 2 is to customers. We have a direct and indirect object. Option number 1, passive voice. Faulty SIM cards are being sold to customers by Orange. Option number 2, customers are being sold faulty SIM cards by Orange. I have gone from is selling to are being sold. B-E-I-N-G corresponds with the ing verb. The lexical verb was in ing. Therefore, I have employed B-E-I-N-G. You might have noticed I'm using the verb to be plus a past participle to form the passive voice. This is level 2 English because I have a level 1 video on the page, which you might have watched. I suggest you watch the level 1 video before you move into this one. I'm going to go quiet so you can have a read of the examples on the screen. Moving on to the past continuous tense. Orange was selling faulty SIM cards to customers. Orange was selling faulty SIM cards to customers. Passive voice. Faulty SIM cards were being sold to customers by Orange. Faulty SIM cards were being sold to customers by Orange. Option number 2, since I have 2 objects. Customers were being sold faulty SIM cards by Orange. Please have a look at my examples on the screen. Was selling becomes, if the object is singular, was being sold. If the object that we now have to use becomes a plural subject, we would have were being sold. The present perfect tense. Orange has sold faulty SIM cards to customers. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. Faulty SIM cards have been sold to customers by Orange. Customers have been sold faulty SIM cards by Orange. Please have a look at my sentences. has sold became have been sold, because the object is now a plural subject. Which option did you go with? Did you have 40 SIM cards have been sold to customers by Orange? Or do you have customers have been sold 40 SIM cards by Orange? The past perfect tense. Orange had sold 40 SIM cards to customers before the state ban. Orange had sold 40 SIM cards to customers before the state ban. Customers had been sold 40 SIM cards, but customers had been sold 40 SIM cards by Orange before the state ban. Option number 2. 40 SIM cards had been sold to customers by Orange before the state ban. Which option did you go with? Had sold became had been sold. In the passive voice, we can only use had. Please have a look at the sentences on the screen. With perfect continuous tenses in the passive voice, we don't really use the tense that is in the active voice. Please listen to what I'm saying. When you have a sentence with a verb phrase in a perfect continuous tense, you come down to the most appropriate tense, because in British English, we only use 6 tenses to form passive voice. In British English, we use 6 tenses to form the passive voice. Because you're clever, you're going to tell me those tenses. You're going to tell me the tenses that we use in the passive voice in British English are present simple, past simple, present continuous, past continuous, present perfect, past perfect. Those are the 6 tenses that we use with basic tenses. I will show you what we do with the infinitive, and I'll show you what we do with got. For now, the question that's probably troubling you is, what happens with perfect continuous tenses? I'm a journalist in Nigeria, I'm not. Say I work a Nigerian journalist, and I went to Abuja market, and I'm writing a feature on Afua. In the active voice, my sentence is, Afua has been selling cupcakes since she moved to Abuja. Afua has been selling cupcakes since she moved to Abuja. I want to use a tense that shows the action is still ongoing. I have an option. My choice would be, cupcakes have been sold by Afua since she moved to Abuja. Or if I want to drop Afua's name completely, I might say, cupcakes are being sold by Afua. Most often we would hear, cupcakes have been sold by Abu. Cupcakes have been sold by Afua since she moved to Abuja. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. Let's have a sentence in the past perfect continuous. Babatunji had been decorating his flat in 2020, not 2021. Babatunji had been decorating his flat in 2020, not 2021. I'm going to be quiet while you have a go at putting that in the passive voice. You're a reporter now on Nigerian television, and you're reading the news. Sorry, you're not a reporter. Who reads news? Newsreader, in it, or broadcaster. What are you going to say? I say, well, writing an article to put on your company's website. How are you going to reword my sentence? Bear in mind the action. Pardon me, I've got something in my eye. Bear in mind the action went on for a while in the past, and I want to reflect that in a passive voice. What did you have? Did you have his flat was being decorated by Babatunji in 2020, not 2021. His flat was being decorated by Babatunji in 2020 and not 2021. Did you drop the by Babatunji phrase as well? Did you have his flat was being decorated in 2020, not 2021? Please have a look at the sentences on the screen. The unnamed subject. If you're attentive and if you watch my videos and if you're gaining anything from this page, then you're going to come up with the answer to the next question in a flash. My next sentence would be, they drink palm wine in West Africa. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. The subject is unnamed. What happens when the subject is not named? If you pay any attention to the boring things I do on this page, and if you're here to improve your skill set, you would give me the answer. The answer should be, palm wine is drunk in West Africa. Nothing else. You do not say palm wine is drunk by them, because that's tautologous. The unnamed subject is just there because in English we like to have a subject in a sentence. Palm wine is drunk in West Africa is what you should have in the passive voice. They grow rice in Lilongwe. Can you give me the passive voice, please? Rice is grown in Lilongwe. They is simply in my sentence because in English, to follow the rules of syntax, I have to have a subject. It's, for instance, what we do in a sentence like, it is raining. What's it? What's it doing in the sentence? It's just filling a gap. It's raining. It's just there because we need a subject. Similarly so, they drink palm wine in West Africa. The passive voice becomes, palm wine is drunk in West Africa. Did you come up with another use of the passive voice? The passive voice is used to indicate anonymity. I am going to show you how the passive voice is used in police work and by the government to protect someone's identity. Often in police work, you don't want to give too much away. Also on the BBC, if you don't want to be sued, you're probably going to be careful what you say. Often, media houses, the police, and the government use the passive voice so that the subject remains anonymous. Please listen to my sentence. The police have arrested Joe Bloggs. Please have a look at my sentence. Now you're a reporter for the Malawian Times, and the Malawian police have said to you, do not reveal the identity of the subject. The subject, who is a suspect in this case, the identity should not be revealed. What are you going to use when you report in the story? You're going to employ the passive voice. And how are you going to protect the subject's identity? You're going to say, a suspect has been arrested. We went from the active voice, Joe Bloggs has been arrested by the police, to a suspect has been arrested. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. To recap, I've shown you another use of the passive voice. 1, for professional purposes. 2, in business English. 3, in academic writing. And 4, for anonymity. Anonymity. To finish, let's look at the infinitive. You know the infinitive is the root form of the verb beginning with the preposition to. The infinitive starts with to plus the root form or the base form of the verb. My infinitive is going to be the verb to hold. Please have a listen to my next example. Belmarsh is going to hold the prisoner. Please have a look at the sentence on the screen. I'm not concerned with the continuous tense is going. I'm now concerned with infinitive to hold. To hold will become will. The prisoner will be held at Belmarsh. The prisoner will be held at Belmarsh. And lastly, let's look at got. In colloquial English in Britain, we use got. Much more so in America, I think, but I've never been to America. In Britain, we use the verb to get or got when we're speaking to form the passive voice. In formal English, have a listen. The passive was, in formal English, it was, my pot plants were blown over by the gust from the storm. Standard passive. Have a look at the sentence on the screen. That's what a reporter might say on the BBC. Miss Bridget James said, in direct quotation marks, my pot plants were blown over by the gust from the storm. End of quotation marks. I would have told the reporter, my pot plants got blown over by the gust from the storm, because I'm speaking. It's colloquial English. My pot plants got blown over by the gust from the storm. Let's have a look at the sentences on the screen. Listen to one more example. I dieted for a whole month, but still got fat. I dieted for a whole month, but still got fat. One last one to finish. Male followers are ignoring my warnings. My warnings are getting ignored. by male followers. To finish, I have shown you how the passive voice is used. And to go out, let's have one example, and I want you to write the correct answer under the screen. Your task is to put this in another form of the passive voice. Please listen. Efwa got herself locked out of her flat yesterday. Efwa got herself locked out of her flat yesterday. Please put that in another form of the passive voice. That was colloquial. How would you write in standard English? Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, kindly post them under this video.